feel like in order to understand the environmental issues, we have to look a little bit at geopolitics.
No, we have to look at the scientists, and that's all. All I care about is what
But you
these
should though,
scientists.
because
No, no, I understand how like the message can be
how do you?
hijacked and be communicated, but I'm not even listening to that message. I'm listening to the guys doing the science, and that's all I care about.
And you trust your sources.
Well, I trust science as a group as a whole. I trust peer review. I trust a lot of other things. I don't trust how if you're saying like, oh, AOC says
Is it the
I don't
IPCC?
I
Called the
don't trust
IPCC?
the AOC saying the world's going to be over in 12 years. Sure, I accept that, but I do trust these things, the sources that these sources are based off of.
Well, but listen, is it called the IPCC?
I don't know. Let's
The
check.
institution that takes care of all those environmental uh, matters. So if you look at the history of that institution, I know for a fact that years ago um, there was a debandada. How do you say that?
It was. I don't know.
A lot of I think it was over 800 scientists that simply left the institution because they did not agree with the way they were, with the integrity of the scientific process that was being applied in that through that institute, being created through by that institution.
Intergovernmental panel on
Climate change, exactly.
So
IPCC.
I see a government word here. I don't care about what these government panels say or don't say. Give me the science that these guys base
Right.
off of it. That's really what
So
matters.
what I understood, the climate crisis comes from models
Of course,
of
everything
weather
comes from models.
exactly. So don't you think it could be a problem there since the
But how are you
models
supposed to
are
make science?
being created by what
How are
do
you supposed everything? Science works by finding patterns in nature, creating models, and predicting. That's
Yeah.
kind of like how everything works.
And what's the predictions been since we started talking about environmental issues? Has any of the problems that were communicated came to fruition? Is the sea level going up? Are the ice caps melting more and more? Like, what are the real impacts since this conversation started?
Okay.
You know, like,
What we call
I
these?
mean-
We call these.
because I don't see that. I don't see that. Since I was born, let's say, and the way I observe the environment around me, I don't see how that's being. It doesn't really connect with my reality and observation.
So you're not observing the poles melt because maybe I don't know. You're not in the poles.
No, I'm not in the poles, but w- w- what exactly needs to melt in order for the ocean levels to go up and
Well-
actually cause some sort of like environmental
Well,
catastrophe?
there's more to glaciers melting than rising sea
And
levels.
I'm just playing the
Sure.
devil's advocate here. I'm just asking questions. I'm not
Okay.
questioning whether or not there are environmental issues that are being caused by that are men caused.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that you need to talk about is, for example, how putting all of this, what we call fresh water, in an ocean does to salinity. Salinity apparently has lots of has a
Salt.
big role. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the dilution of salt in the ocean, according to some experts, has a big role in how currents work, in the general acidification of the
Ocean.
of the ocean. Maybe not salinity, but that's a big thing with the release of carbon and how the ocean absorbs that carbon. And so there are issues that are more visible or less visible, but still as important or more important, some would say, than the actual rising of the ocean. Like the ocean is a big place. Like how much water is in the actual poles that can actually melt? How much water can you transfer from the solid state that doesn't touch the water into, and how would that affect? I don't
Right.
personally know. But we're talking about.
I just like to find some evidence.
What do you mean find? Are you?
I just like to understand like the real evidence where all those climate changes are actually are actually being done by the existence of human beings.
Well, it's
You
not the
know,
existence
or
of human beings. It's the release of
CO2
CO2 into the
into the
atmosphere, and
atmosphere.
what they call
That
the
is the the greenhouse
the greenhouse
effect, and
effect.
then
So
it's
greenhouse gases. Do you understand what they mean by greenhouse gases? So
yeah.
during quote unquote ice ages, the global temperature cools off. Why does it cool off? Because there's less of a concentration of greenhouse gases all across the atmosphere.
Or
So
maybe
the sun shines it's a constant amount of energy that the sun shines
but the
at
sun
planet
itself
Earth.
goes into cycles, and I
Doesn't
know that
matter.
it heats the Earth, and because of those cycles, natural cycles, it heats up the Earth more or heats up
No,
the Earth less.
I'm not aware of
And the
those of how what kind of cycles are we talking about and how long are these cycles?
no, I'm not an expert, so but
Well, we can Google that for
for the
next
little
time.
bit that I understand, the climate and the weather in our planet is regulated by oceans and the sun and well, basically the ocean and the sun, or
Well,
maybe
the
the
ocean,
moon
the
too. I'm
sun.
not sure, but let's say when we talk about CO2 being released into the atmosphere,
Mhm.
I believe that one volcano eruption will produce a much larger amount of CO2 that the whole humanity produces in like I don't know, like a whole year or something like that. It's like
Sure, but
something
how
absurd.
often? How often do you? How big is that eruption? Has to be.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm just like putting this idea out there, like how much of that impact is it's actually created by man, and how much we as community we have to adapt in order to save the environment. Let's
Well, go
say.
measure it. We don't have to speculate. You can measure, or you can have a very, very
Does
educated estimate about how much all the industry puts out, all the boat industry, all the freight industry, all the transportation
and
industry,
also
the air transportation industry, all the cars, all
right,
everything puts out. If it burns fossil fuels,
right,
if you have to heat stuff by burning fossil fuels, you're gonna get like a byproduct, which is
right.
CO2, and other endeavors will generate stuff like methane. Doesn't matter. But the thing is that there was a point where none of this was happening before the Industrial Revolution, before the invention of the combustion engine. So there's a clear start, and it happened like around what 200 years ago, 150
Mhm.
years ago. And then you started, and there was this huge explosion of energy consumption because the energy consumption of every year is bigger than the year before because population growth, because industry growth, all these other factors, right?
Mhm.
And you can't deny that we're talking about a lot it's being released in a very, very short amount of time.
Yeah.
So that in itself, empirically, even without any evidence, you can say like, wow, we're really burning a lot of things. Like we might feel like the air is infinite and you can never, create like a smog, coat that's going to cover the earth. But it's not unreasonable to think, just without even getting into the actual factual science, that a lot of these, there has to have a sort of an impact. Is it neglectable compared to an eruption? Maybe. But the eruption is already happening. Like you have eruptions happening all the time. You have, the Pacific Ring of Fire. So think about the things that already happen all the time.
So you think whatever we're adding up to that is the problem?
Well, yeah.
Could be the problem?
Yeah. And it's not saying that it doesn't happen naturally. It says, what I'm saying is like instead of happening over a span of 100,000 years or however long is an ice age, it's happening over 1% of that time.
So are we causing a problem, or we're just accelerating a problem?
Well, well, if you're saying,
Because
are we
if
causing
we've had the ice age in the past,
if I
what
have a
stops
car,
the world to
if
just,
I'm
like,
driving a
decide
car,
to have another ice age, and is that going to be blamed on us, or is it just the natural cycle of the planet, or a natural cycle of the sun? Because I know there's something. I mean,
what's
again,
the difference between me driving a car and
I just want to
stopping
understand
my
that
car.
everything that we're jeopardizing and changing.
But what are we jeopardizing and changing? But before you say that, let me tell you
the
this
meat,
joke.
meat consumption, for
I want-
example. What did they do?
But what are we talking about,
What
cars?
are they doing with the Dutch agricultures up there?
Well, that's a different story.
Well, they're basically trying to make people
Go vegan. I don't know.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is coming.
This is a separate question. Right now, I want to ask you this question. What is the difference
Ask me.
between me driving at 100 miles per hour and slamming against the wall or stopping like a mile away, so very slowly?
Is that a good analogy, though?
That's a great analogy,
Okay.
right? Because what is me accelerating my stop versus me?
Well, and how much are we contributing to that acceleration? Are
Well,
we really accelerating? And
if we
let's say,
how much did the wall contribute to me stopping? Was it really? I was about to stop. It was just going to take me a few
in the great scheme
a
of
mile
things,
longer. But what's the difference in the impact that it had on me personally? Right? I slammed against the wall. I died. If I slowed the process down, I would not have crashed. I would not have died. So we're talking about in an instant.
Yeah, but you're talking about an action that will take seconds to happen.
But in proportion, it's the same
Exactly.
proportion. There's an adaptation of the environment.
How many years? Yeah.
Of all of the climate, it's very slow and very gradual. And if you're saying, what's the difference between spreading this out over 100,000 years
Right.
and spreading this out over 200 years? I mean, 100 to 2,000 is the 2%, right?
So basically,
It's a 0.2%.
What I'm gonna be doing right now. Let's say I'm gonna have to sell my car, my combustion car, and I'm gonna have to spend more money.
You already drive
and buy-
electric. What are you talking about?
Well, anyway, I'm just giving it like a friend of mine.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's.
I have
not
a friend of
already
mine who
driving
has a
electric.
combustion car, like one of those Challengers, But anyways, like what I'm saying, our people are going to have to make certain sacrifices in the name of environmental balance, because if we don't do that right now, if I don't make that change right now, the world, it's going to end in 1,000 years from now.
Well,
Or am I making that sacrifice for my generation? Or am I making that sacrifice for my children or my grandchildren? Like what's that time span? How long is that going to take? Because I've been hearing that since we started having that conversation on environmental issues, that the world is going to end in 10 years. The world is going to end in 12 years. We keep postponing the world end. The end of the world, And I don't know. I feel like there's an imbalance there, and I don't think
That
our
is not
approach and
controversial.
our solutions are not proportional to the actual problem. I just want to understand if the changes and the sacrifices that we're making right now, if I stop eating meat, which I believe it's a very nutritious and essential, bioavailable food for me, so I can strive as a healthy human being. If I jeopardize that, I'll be jeopardizing if I make that sacrifice, I'll be jeopardizing my health, my overall health, optimal health, I would say. Because I've had that experience in the past. I was a vegetarian for 3 years. I had some health issues. I went back to consuming meat, and I felt much better.
So
I
happy now.
had a lot of issues, simply dissolve, But anyways, I can tell.
That's for another episode.
That's for another episode. But I really had a health impact, and I started living an optimal life.
So it sounds to me
But
like you're afraid of somebody taking your steak away.
Should I make that sacrifice so the world will not end in 1,000 years from now?
Hello everybody, and thank you for watching until the end. This has been Woke Wars, and I hope you liked our conversation. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about next. Also, check out some of our other episodes. We post every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We will see you on the next one.